Thanks, Cameron. So, hi everybody. If you don't know SciDevNet, I'll just quickly introduce you to SciDevNet. And then I'll talk about a project that we're running, which we're really excited about. It's our podcast. It's a radio podcast. So SciDevNet, we are a news service. We're based around in the global south, as you can see. We work around 5 independent editions, and we publish in French, Arabic, Spanish, as well as English. So each edition is centered in a particular country. So we've got our MENA edition in Egypt. We've got our English Sub-Saharan Africa edition in Kenya. We've got our Francophone edition in Senegal, our Spanish language edition in Brazil, and our Asia Pacific edition in the Philippines. We reached with our news we reached 200 million people last year with our news, and that's through our website, but also through social media and syndication. And that's where we see real potential, is reaching out to other news organizations. I'll just show you quickly the team. These are our regional coordinators and others. We meet once a year. We've moved to Oxfordshire, Cameron. I don't know if you know that. So we all come to Wallingford in Oxfordshire. So let me talk about the podcast. It's in French. I've put a translation up. It's called Santé, Science et Développement. I'll just play you the most recent episode, if this works.
Santé, Science et Développement, une émission de SciDev.net.
Bonjour l'Afrique, bienvenue dans cette 29e édition de Santé, Science et Développement, le magazine de SciDev.net consacré à la santé et à la science sur le continent africain. Au micro, Sylvia Coussant.
Cette semaine.
Le Nigeria, premier pays subsaharien à avoir rapporté un cas de coronavirus, offre un aperçu de la capacité des pays.
So that's just to give you an idea of the kind of podcast it is. So it's called a radio podcast, and okay. So it's called a radio podcast, and that's because we produce it online, but it's actually broadcast on radio, and we have partnerships with 12 radio stations. I've only put a few up here because I couldn't find the logos for all of them. And we're reaching over 8 million people a week with this podcast. We feel it's great for us because we want, obviously, to show our funders that we're reaching high numbers of people. But the bigger reason is that we want to increase healthcare literacy. We want to tell people about health, about science, why it's important, what it can do for them. This is the brainchild of Amzat Fassassi. I must mention his name. He's our regional coordinator in Senegal. He's a former BBC journalist, and he came up with this idea. So, which is why we have our focus, and he's built this network. I just wanted to play for you an example of the kind of things we're hearing. So, this is a piece we did on Ebola. It's a vox pops on the streets of Kinshasa. I hope this works.
L'Ebola, pour moi, c'est comme un mythe. C'est comme une histoire inventée, je ne sais d'où.
À un moment donné, on a pensé qu'on avait pu trouver des antidotes par rapport à cette maladie. Mais à en croire le nombre de morts actuellement, on se demanderait si ce ne serait pas un mauvais sort ou une malédiction, une sorcellerie, des trucs du genre, quoi.
So it's an example of how we're trying to listen to people's opinions and then match that against the scientific evidence. So
l'Ebola.
J'appelle de Ouagadougou au Burkina Faso.
So we have a section specifically designed for that. It's called Kesako. The whole podcast is just 15 minutes. But every week we have the Kesako section where we take questions from people. They submit them via WhatsApp, so, with a WhatsApp voice message. And then we go to a research. We put that question to a researcher, and we get the scientific answer. So I'll just play you an example.
J'appelle de Ouagadougou au Burkina Faso. Le Conseil régional du Centre de l'Ordre national des infirmiers et infirmières du Burkina a affirmé lors de sa dernière assemblée générale que près de 40% des infirmiers de la région du centre exercent illégalement. Comment peut-on expliquer cette situation?
Okay, so we have this every week. You can listen to the podcast
J'appelle de
online as well. I mean, it is a podcast. So it's available on our website. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Podcasts. But most of our listeners are coming through these radio stations. So what feedback have we had? First of all, the radio stations, there's very little out there. They're not reporting on science. It's boring. People like listening to music. So we've managed to get this program into a lot of the schedules. So and radio stations are coming to us now and asking if they can also take it, which is great because the original partnerships were built up by us giving equipment to them, and really we felt that we had to convince them to broadcast this, but we found that actually they're really happy to do it, and most of them broadcast it a couple of times a week. We haven't managed to get much impact yet, but we're doing some work with Translators Without Borders, who are working with UCL on a bigger project, but they've managed to take some time to ask about our podcast as well. So they found out that the people they've spoken to, they found the podcast more useful than other information they've received, and they felt that it gave concrete answers to questions that they had where they weren't getting concrete answers before. And they asked us to whether we could broadcast in Swahili. And it's something we'd love to do, but something that we don't have the funding for at the moment. In fact, our funding is primarily from the IDRC in Canada. We also receive some support from the Wellcome Trust here, so thank you if anyone's here from Wellcome. But we need more, and particularly, to expand in Swahili. We'd also like to do it in English, and potentially other local languages, but that depends on our research. So thank you, and then many thanks ISNTD for giving us an award for our podcast yesterday, which we greatly appreciate. Thank you.